In the vast wilderness of Wyoming, where the wind carries whispers from a forgotten past, there are paths invisible to the human eye. Ancient roots etched into the land long before borders were drawn on maps. What brings a broken man to the edge of nowhere? What drives a wild mare in desperate need to seek help from the very species she fears? Some encounters are not accidents of fate. They are ordained by forces older than memory itself. When a silver mare appears at a reclusive veteran's doorstep in the dead of winter, bearing her dying foal and eyes heavy with a desperate plea, she carries with her a mystery as old as the mountains themselves. A mystery that will awaken long-buried truths and challenge the boundaries between wild and tame, broken and healed. In a land where ancient migration roots the wind's path face modern threats, one man's journey from isolation to purpose begins with a single act of trust from the most unexpected source. Some wounds can only be healed by that which we fear to face. The nightmare always began the same way. Afghanistan 2008. The sun blazed overhead, merciless and unforgiving. Dust hung in the air, choking, blinding. The cries of wounded men echoed across the forward operating base. Dr. Noah Reed's hands worked with practiced precision on the injured military dog, before him a Belgian Malinois named Rex, whose chest heaved with labored breaths. Shrapnel had torn through his left flank. "Stay with me, boy," Noah murmured, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Gunfire crackled in the distance. The radio beside him squawked with frantic voices. Lieutenant Robert Thornton appeared at his side, face streaked with dirt and sweat. "Doc, we've got more incoming, 4 men down, 2 critical." Noah nodded without looking up, his fingers probing the dog's wound. 2 minutes. I need to stabilize Rex first. My father would say the men come before the Robert said, but there was no malice in his voice, just the dark humor that had sustained them all. "Your father isn't here," Noah replied, "and Rex has saved more lives than both of us combined." A smile flickered across Robert's face. "Fair enough. 2 minutes, then we need you." The ground suddenly trembled. Noah looked up, time slowing, as he saw Robert's expression change from determination to confusion. The deafening blast came next, the shock wave throwing Noah backward. Heat seared his face. Screams filled the air. When he struggled to his feet, the world had transformed into a nightmarish tableau of fire and black smoke. Bodies lay scattered. Noah saw Robert pinned beneath fallen debris, blood pooling beneath him. 20 feet away, 4 other soldiers were down, their comrades desperately trying to help them. The impossible choice presented itself with brutal clarity: Robert or the others. Noah's feet were already moving toward the group of wounded men, his medical training overriding everything else. "I'll be back," he shouted to Robert, though he couldn't be sure the lieutenant heard him. He worked frantically, stabilizing the wounded, barking orders. When he finally turned to make his way back to Robert, another explosion rocked the base. This time, when the smoke cleared, where Robert had been, there was nothing but scorched earth. Noah's hands began to shake. They never stopped shaking after that. Noah Reed awoke with a violent jerk, his body drenched in cold sweat despite the chill in his Wyoming cabin. The digital clock on his nightstand read 2:17 a.m. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows of the small wooden structure. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, pressing his palms against his eyes until he saw bursts of color. 5 years since Afghanistan. 5 years, and still the dreams came. He rose, pulled on a threadbare robe, and made his way to the kitchen. The cabin was sparse but functional, a testament to his solitary existence. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, embers still glowing faintly. Bookshelves lined another, filled with medical texts and dog-eared paperbacks. On the mantel sat his only decoration, a shadow box containing his medals and service commendations gathering dust. Noah poured himself a glass of water and stood at the window, looking out at the vast Wyoming landscape. Even in darkness, he could make out the silhouettes of the rolling hills that surrounded his property. 30 miles to White Ridge, the nearest town. That was exactly how he wanted it. The wind's intensity increased, bringing with it the season's last snowfall. March in Wyoming was unpredictable, winter reluctant to release its grip. Noah was about to return to bed when he heard a sound distinct from the howling wind, a sharp, insistent knock. He froze. Nobody came to his door, especially not in the middle of a snowstorm. Not at this hour. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. Noah moved to the cabinet beside the refrigerator and retrieved his Remington shotgun. He kept it loaded, but with the safety on old habits from his military days. Cautiously, he approached the front door, flicked on the porch light, and peered through the peephole. Nothing but darkness greeted him. The knocking continued. Noah disengaged the safety, took a deep breath, and swung the door open, a shotgun raised. What he saw made him lower the weapon immediately. Standing on his porch was a wild mare, her silver-gray coat dusted with snow. Steam rose from her nostrils in the cold air as she regarded him with dark, intelligent eyes that reflected the porch light. She pawed at the wooden boards once more, the source of the knocking. But it was what lay beside her that froze Noah's blood. A foal no more than a few months old lay collapsed on the porch, its small body shivering uncontrollably. A dark stain matted the fur on its hind leg, blood fresh and alarming against the light-colored coat. The mare made a soft, nickering sound, looking from Noah to her foal and back again. There was something in her gaze that transcended the barrier between species, a desperate plea that needed no translation. Noah stood transfixed. His hands began to tremble, not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. For 5 years, he had avoided exactly this being needed, being the only hope for a life hanging in the balance. For 5 years, he had repeated his mantra, "These hands can't save anyone anymore." The mare nickered again, softer this time. The foal's breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of its small chest a struggle. "I can't," Noah whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking to the mare or to himself. The mare kneeled then, pressing her muzzle against her foal's neck before turning her gaze back to Noah. The gesture was so deliberately human, so full of maternal desperation, that Noah felt something shift inside him, a door opening that he had kept firmly shut for years. "Last time," he murmured, setting the shotgun aside. "Just this once." Moving slowly, he approached the foal. The mare watched but didn't retreat, her body tense but her eyes unwavering. Noah knelt beside the injured animal, gently placing a hand on its neck. The foal was burning with fever, its pulse rapid and weak. With careful movements, Noah lifted the foal into his arms. It weighed less than he expected, its body frighteningly light. The mare followed his movements with those intelligent eyes, but made no move to stop him as he carried her offspring into the cabin. Inside, Noah cleared the coffee table with one sweep of his arm, sending books and an empty mug clattering to the floor. He laid the foal down and hurried to retrieve his old medical kit from the back of his closet, where it had remained untouched for 5 years. The black bag was dusty, the zipper stiff from disuse. When Noah opened it, the familiar smell of antiseptic and medical-grade plastic brought a rush of memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. His hands trembled as he removed sterile gloves, gauze, and antiseptic solution. The foal's wound was worse than he'd initially thought. A deep gash ran along its hind leg, the edges clean and deliberate. Not the result of an accident or predator attack. "Gunshot," Noah muttered, recognizing the distinctive pattern of tissue damage. Who would shoot a foal? As he cleaned the wound, the foal stirred weakly, its eyes fluttering open for a brief moment. They were the color of dark amber, filled with pain and confusion. "Easy," Noah said softly. "Easy now." Through the window, he could see the mare pacing outside, her silhouette moving back and forth beyond the glass. She hadn't left despite the opportunity for freedom. Something told Noah she wouldn't leave without her foal. The wound was deep, but hadn't hit an artery, a small mercy. As Noah worked, his training took over hands, moving with muscle memory that transcended the years of disuse. He cleaned, disinfected, and carefully examined the wound for foreign objects. His fingers found something embedded in the flesh, a small metallic fragment. Using tweezers, he extracted it and held it up to the light. Not a standard bullet fragment, the edges were too uniform, the material, unlike anything he'd seen in typical hunting ammunition. Setting it aside for closer examination later, Noah continued working. He administered antibiotics from his kit, grateful he'd kept it stocked out of habit. After applying a pressure bandage, he wrapped the foal's leg carefully. The small animal's breathing was still labored, but seemed slightly stronger. Noah prepared a mixture of warm water and honey using a clean syringe without the needle to carefully drip it onto the foal's tongue. Most of it dribbled out, but some went down and the foal swallowed reflexively. "That's it," Noah encouraged. "Small steps." He fashioned a bed from old blankets near the fireplace, adding fresh wood to build the flames higher. The foal needed warmth to combat shock and fever. After settling the animal on the makeshift bed, Noah returned to the window. The mare remained now standing sentinel-like before the cabin. Their eyes met through the glass, and Noah felt an uncanny connection, an understanding passing between them. "I'll do what I can," he said, knowing she couldn't hear him. "I promise." As the first light of dawn crept over the Wyoming hills, Noah sat beside the foal, monitoring its breathing and temperature. His own exhaustion pressed down on him, but he refused to sleep, not until he knew the foal would survive the night. Outside, the mare maintained her vigil, a silent guardian in the fading snowstorm. White Ridge existed in a fold of time that the modern world had largely forgotten. A single main street lined with weathered storefronts, most dating back to the 1940s, served as the heart of the small community. Pickup trucks far outnumbered cars, and everyone knew everyone else's business before sundown. Sarah Medicine River wiped down the counter of her general store, glancing occasionally at the wall clock. If Noah Reed kept to his usual schedule, he would appear sometime in the next hour for his monthly supply run. Unlike most of her customers, Noah never lingered to chat, never shared details of his life up in the hills. He arrived like a ghost, gathered his supplies, and disappeared again. The bell above the door jingled, and Sarah looked up expectantly, but it was only Michael Davis, the new forest ranger, who'd been assigned to the area 3 months ago. Young, earnest, and still adjusting to the slow pace of White Ridge. "Morning, Sarah," he said, removing his wide-brimmed hat. "Got any of that coffee going?" "Fresh pot," she replied, gesturing to the small coffee station in the corner. "How's it going out there? Still counting trees?" Davis laughed, pouring himself a cup. "Among other things, had some reports of wild horses being shot out near Carson Ridge. Been looking into it, but no solid leads yet." Sarah's expression darkened. "That's the third report this month. Doesn't the Wildlife Service have any idea who's responsible? They say it's probably locals managing the population." Davis said, his tone making it clear he didn't buy that explanation. "But the shooting patterns don't match typical population control. Something else is going on." The bell jingled again, and this time it was Noah who stepped through the door. He looked worse than usual. Dark circles under his eyes, hair, uncombed clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them, or hadn't slept at all. "Reed," Sarah greeted him, using his title as she always did, though he never acknowledged it. "Wasn't expecting you for another couple of weeks." Noah nodded curtly. "Need some extra supplies." His voice was rough from disuse. "And if you have any oats or alfalfa, I'll take that too." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Oats and alfalfa? You getting into livestock?" "Doctor?" "Something like that," Noah muttered, avoiding her gaze. Davis extended his hand. "Don't think we formally met. Michael Davis, Forest Service." Noah hesitated before briefly shaking the offered hand. "Noah Reed. Sputter Reed lives up in the Carson Hills," Sarah explained. "About 30 miles out. Keeps to himself mostly." "That whole area's been active lately," Davis said. "You haven't noticed anything unusual out your way, have you? Any strangers or unusual activities?" Noah's expression remained carefully neutral. "No, nothing." Sarah studied him. After 3 years of these brief monthly interactions, she developed a sense for Noah Reed's moods. Today, something was different. A tension in his shoulders, a alertness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I'll get your usual order together," she said, "and add some oats and alfalfa. Anything else you need?" Noah hesitated. "Do you know where I can find Dr. Finley?" "Oliver?" Sarah asked, surprised. "He's usually at his place out on Cottonwood Road. Doesn't get many visitors these days." "Thanks." Noah turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Do you know anyone around here who might be hunting wild horses?" Davis straightened, suddenly interested. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Noah said, his tone deliberately casual. "Saw some tracks near my property. Thought I heard gunshots a few nights back." "Wild horses are protected," Davis said. "Any hunting would be illegal unless sanctioned by the Bureau of Land Management for population control, and they would announce that publicly." Noah nodded. "Right. Good to know." As he turned to leave, the door opened again, and Colonel James Thornton strode in, filling the small store with his commanding presence. In his early 60s, Thornton maintained the rigid posture and sharp eyes of his military days. His tailored clothes and polished boots stood in stark contrast to the practical attire of most White Ridge residents. He stopped short at the sight of Noah, a flicker of surprise crossing his weathered features before his expression settled into something harder. "Reed," he said, voice clipped, "didn't expect to see you in town." "Thornton, Burn," Noah replied, equally terse. The tension between the two men was palpable, charging the air like the static before a lightning strike. Sarah cleared her throat. Colonel Thornton, your special order came in yesterday. I'll get it from the back. No rush, Sarah, Thornton said, his eyes still fixed on Noah. How's that piece of land treating you, Reed, still playing hermit up there? It suits me, Noah said. Shame. All that good grazing land going to waste. Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. My offer still stands, you know. Horizon Ranch could use that northern parcel. I'd pay fair market value. Not interested, Noah replied flatly. Thornton shrugged. Well, if you change your mind, town's changing, Reed. Progress is coming whether folks like it or not. Davis watched the exchange with interest. You're behind the Horizon Ranch project, sir. Indeed I am, Ranger Davis, Thornton said, shifting his attention. Going to put White Ridge on the map. Luxury resort-guided hunting experiences, the works. Good jobs for locals, tax revenue for the county. And what about the wild horse herds that migrate through that area? Davis asked. The Carson Ridge corridor is a traditional route. Thornton's smile tightened. All being taken into consideration, I assure you. In fact, I'm heading a community initiative to address the wild horse overpopulation issue. They're destroying grazing land, competing with legitimate ranching operations. The BLM agrees something needs to be done. Noah's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Well, I should get my supplies, he said finally. Sarah, I'll come back for my order in an hour. As Noah pushed past Thornton toward the door, the older man spoke again, his voice low enough that only Noah could hear. You always were good at walking away when things got difficult, weren't you, Doctor? Noah paused, his back stiffening, but didn't respond. He continued out the door, letting it swing shut behind him. Sarah returned with a package for Thornton, having missed the exchange. Here you are, Colonel. Special ordered from Cheyenne, just as you asked. Thank you, Sarah, Thornton said, his charming smile returning. And how is your father still filling the younger generation's heads with those old Shoshone stories? Sarah's expression cooled slightly. Chief Nathan is doing well. Our stories are our heritage, Colonel. They've survived worse threats than modernity. Of course, Thornton said smoothly. No offense meant. In fact, I hope to speak with Wehen soon about some opportunities for the reservation to participate in the Horizon Project. Could be quite beneficial for your people. I'm sure he'll listen to what you have to say, Sarah replied diplomatically. After Thornton left, Davis turned to Sarah. What's the story with those two? Felt like I walked into the middle of an old Western standoff. Sarah sighed, returning to wiping down the counter. Not my story to tell, but they served together from what I understand. Something happened overseas. Neither one talks about it. Davis nodded thoughtfully. And this Horizon Ranch project, what do people around here really think about it? Depends who you ask, Sarah said. Some see dollar signs in progress. Others worry about what we might lose. She paused, then added more quietly. My father says when the wind can no longer find its path, the spirits will have nowhere to ride. The wind's path? An old Shoshone belief, Sarah explained. The seasonal routes that the wild creatures follow, especially the horses. We believe they carry the spirits of our ancestors. When those paths are blocked, she shrugged. Bad things happen. Davis considered this. I'd like to speak with your father sometime if he's willing. There's something not right about these horse shootings, and I'm getting stonewalled by my superiors every time I bring it up. I'll let him know, Sarah promised, but be prepared once Chief Nathan starts sharing stories you might be there a while. The road to Oliver Finley's property wound through stands of cottonwood trees just beginning to show the first pale green buds of spring. Noah drove slowly, his mind replaying the encounter with Thornton. The man's presence in White Ridge complicated matters. If anyone would recognize military-grade ammunition, it would be Thornton. Oliver's house came into view, a modest ranch-style home, set back from the road, surrounded by what had once been meticulously maintained gardens, but now showed signs of neglect. A weathered sign at the entrance read, Finley Veterinary Services. Though Noah knew Oliver hadn't officially practiced in years, he parked and approached the front door, metal fragment secure in his pocket. Before he could knock, the door swung open. Oliver Finley had the appearance of a man who had once been imposing, but had somehow deflated. Tall and broad-shouldered, but with a stoop that diminished his height. White hair that might have once been carefully combed now stuck out at odd angles. His eyes, however, remained sharp and assessing behind wire-rimmed glasses. 5 years you live in my county and this is your first visit, Oliver said by way of greeting. Must be something important. Noah wasn't surprised the older man recognized him. White Ridge had few secrets. I need your expertise, Dr. Finley. Haven't been called doctor in a long time, Oliver said, stepping back to allow Noah entry. Most folks are around here just call me the old drunk vet. The interior of the house was cluttered but not unclean. Books and journals were stacked on every available surface, and one wall was dedicated entirely to frame veterinary certificates and awards relics of a more distinguished past. I found an injured foal, Noah said, getting straight to the point. Wild Mustang gunshot wound to the hind leg. Oliver's bushy eyebrows rose. And you brought it to your place. That's federal property, son. Wild horses are protected. It was dying, Noah said simply. Oliver studied him with renewed interest. Coffee? Noah nodded and Oliver led him to a kitchen that looked more like a laboratory. A microscope sat on the counter beside a coffee maker, and glass slides were stacked next to mugs. I still keep my hand in research-wise, Oliver explained, noticing Noah's glance. Old habits. He poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that looked fresh enough. So this foal, what's its condition? Stable but weak. Fever, shock, blood loss. I cleaned and dressed the wound, administered antibiotics. The mare is still there too. The mother stayed interesting. Oliver sipped his coffee. Wild horses don't typically trust humans, especially with their young. She came to my door, Noah said. Literally knocked until I answered. Oliver stared at him. That's unusual behavior even for a desperate mother. Nay, he set down his cup. What else? Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out the metal fragment, placing it on the kitchen counter. I found this embedded in the wound. It's not like any hunting round I've seen. Oliver pulled a pair of tweezers from a drawer and picked up the fragment, holding it to the light. His expression grew serious. He moved to the microscope, placed the fragment on a slide, and bent to examine it. Where exactly is your property, Dr. Reed? Northern edge of Carson Ridge, about 5 miles from the old Hammond mining claim. Oliver straightened from the microscope. You're on the Winds Path. The what? Local Shoshone name for that corridor. It's a traditional migration route for the wild horse herds. Oliver returned to the fragment. This isn't a standard bullet fragment. The composition is all wrong. He looked up at Noah. Military background correct, I hear things even out here. Noah nodded once. Then you know what I'm going to say. This looks like a fragment from a specialized round, not something your average hunter or rancher would use. Oliver's voice lowered. Who'd you serve under, if you don't mind my asking? Why does that matter? Because James Thornton's been buying up every piece of land he can get around here, and rumor has it his Horizon Ranch project isn't just about tourism and hunting trips. Oliver pushed the slide toward Noah. Look familiar. Noah bent to the microscope. The metallic fragment's composition and design were indeed familiar, reminiscent of specialized ammunition he'd encountered during his service. Ammunition designed not just to kill, but to maximize damage. Thornton approached you about selling, Oliver asked. Several times over the past year, Noah confirmed. I always refused. And you said the mare brought her foal specifically to you. Oliver rubbed his chin thoughtfully, almost like she knew. Knew what? That you could help. That you were a doctor. Oliver shook his head. Sounds crazy when I say it out loud. Noah thought of the mare's intelligent eyes, the deliberate way she had sought him out. It did sound crazy, and yet, what do you know about Thornton's project? Noah asked. Oliver hesitated, then moved to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of whiskey. He added a splash to his coffee. Used to be his biggest supporter, he admitted. He promised to help me get my license reinstated if I backed him with the town council. What changed? Started hearing things, seeing things. Oliver took a long sip of his spiked coffee. Late-night convoys heading out to the old Hammond site. Security personnel who don't look like typical resort staff. And now wild horses being shot with military-grade ammunition. He looked squarely at Noah. I may be a washed-up old vet, but I'm not stupid. Something's not right. Noah processed this information, connecting it with his own observations and the encounter at the store. The forest ranger mentioned multiple reports of horse shootings. Davis is a good kid, asking the right questions, but his superiors keep shutting him down. Oliver sighed heavily. Look, I don't know what's happening out there, but I know Thornton. Served with him years ago before your time. The man's brilliant and ruthless in equal measure. If he wants your land badly enough, he'll find a way to get it. I can take care of myself, Noah said. I'm sure you can. Oliver studied him. But what about the foal and its mother? They came to you for a reason, Dr. Reed. Maybe it's time you figured out why. By the time Noah returned to his cabin, the afternoon sun was beginning to sink toward the western hills. The mare was where he had left her grazing on sparse early spring grass near the porch. She raised her head as his truck approached, watching with that same unnerving intelligence. Noah gathered his supplies from the truck, including the bags of oats and alfalfa he'd purchased from Sarah's store. The mare followed his movements but maintained her distance. Inside, he found the foal awake, its amber eyes tracking him as he entered. The small animal had managed to lift its head, though it remained lying on the blankets. Hey there, Noah said softly, kneeling beside it. Brought you something to eat. He prepared a mash of oats softened with warm water and honey, placing it in a shallow pan near the foal's head. The animal sniffed cautiously, then took a tentative lick. After a moment, it began to eat with increasing enthusiasm. Noah checked the bandage on its leg. No fresh bleeding, and the swelling seemed to have reduced slightly. The antibiotics were working. He changed the dressing, cleaned the wound, and applied fresh antibiotic ointment. You need a name, he said as he worked. Can't just keep calling you foal. The young horse's coat was a warm brown with flecks of gold that caught the light when it moved. Its eyes, so expressive and alert, despite its weakened state, reminded Noah of whiskey and sunlight. Echo, he decided. I'll call you Echo. Outside, the mare nickered softly as if responding to the naming of her offspring. Noah went to the window and watched her for a moment. She deserved a name too. And you, he said quietly, you'll be Stella. He prepared a bucket of oats mixed with alfalfa and carried it outside, placing it a safe distance from the porch steps. The mare, Stella, watched him cautiously but didn't retreat. It's all right, Noah said, backing away slowly. It's for you. Once he was several yards away, Stella approached the bucket and began to eat. Noah watched, struck again by her deliberate movements, so unlike the skittish behavior typical of wild animals. As darkness fell, Noah made another bed for himself on the couch, wanting to stay close to Echo through the night. The foal's condition seemed to be improving, but the first 48 hours after trauma were critical. Before settling in, he checked outside once more. Stella had moved closer to the cabin, lying now at the foot of the porch steps as if standing guard. Their eyes met briefly before Noah closed the door. That night, for the first time in years, Noah's dreams weren't filled with explosions and dying comrades. Instead, he dreamed of open plains and running horses, their manes flowing like banners in the wind. And in the dream, his hands were steady. He awoke before dawn to the sound of Echo stirring. The foal was attempting to stand, his good legs wobbling with the effort while keeping weight off the injured one. Easy, Noah cautioned, moving to support the animal. You're not ready for that yet. But Echo was determined, pushing against Noah's hands until it managed to balance precariously on three legs. It stood for nearly a minute before exhaustion took over and it carefully lowered itself back to the blankets. Stubborn, Noah observed with grudging admiration. That's good, you'll need that. After preparing fresh mash for Echo and checking that Stella had water in the bucket he'd left outside, Noah made a decision. It was time to learn more about what was happening in his backyard. The northern edge of his property bordered wild country, a mix of federal land and old mining claims that had been abandoned decades ago. If Thornton was up to something in that area, there might be evidence. Noah retrieved his binoculars and an old topographical map of the region. He marked his cabin, then traced the likely path that Stella would have taken to reach him. Based on the foal's condition when it arrived, they couldn't have traveled far, maybe 5 miles at most. That put their point of origin somewhere near the old Hammond mining claim, exactly where Oliver had mentioned seeing unusual activity. Noah studied the map more closely. The area was marked with a faded notation, seasonal migration corridor, the wind's path, as Oliver had called it. After checking Echo once more and leaving fresh food and water, Noah spoke to the foal softly. I'll be back soon. Gonna find out what happened to you. Outside, Stella watched as Noah prepared for his hike. He packed light water, energy bars, the binoculars, and a small first aid kit. After a moment's hesitation, he added his service pistol, just in case. Stella nickered softly as he set out toward the northern ridge, almost as if in warning or encouragement. Noah couldn't tell which. The spring morning was crisp, the ground still partially frozen from the night's chill. Noah moved with the quiet efficiency of his military training, alert to his surroundings. Though he had lived on this land for 5 years, he rarely ventured far from his cabin, preferring the controlled environment he had created for himself. Now pushing deeper into the wild country, he felt simultaneously exposed and awakened, as if parts of himself long dormant were stirring back to life. After an hour's hike, he reached a vantage point that overlooked a small valley. Below, a stream wound through new grass and stands of aspen trees shivered in the morning breeze. It was the kind of pristine landscape that had drawn him to Wyoming in the first place, untouched, eternal. But as Noah raised his binoculars, he saw signs that the eternity had been interrupted. Fresh tire tracks cut across meadows where no roads existed. A glint of metal caught his eye. A game camera dash attached to a tree, its lens pointed toward the valley floor. Moving more cautiously now, Noah descended into the valley following the stream. The signs of intrusion became more evident: broken branches, trash caught in bushes, shell casings glinting in the mud. He picked up one of the casings, examining it closely. Military grade, just like the fragment he'd removed from Echo's leg. Noah pocketed it and continued on, an uneasy feeling growing in his gut. The stream led him to a clearing that stopped him cold. Bodies of wild horses, at least one, lay scattered across the ground. They had been dead for days, their remains already being reclaimed by nature. All showed signs of gunshot wounds. Noah moved among them, his medical training allowing him to assess the injuries with clinical detachment, even as his anger mounted. These weren't mercy killings or population control. The shots had been placed to maximize suffering and to test effectiveness. These horses had been used as targets, as test subjects. A sound made Noah drop to a crouch, hand moving to his pistol. Across the clearing at the edge of the tree line stood a wild horse. For a moment he thought it was Stella, but this one was larger, a stallion with a coat the color of burnished copper. It regarded Noah for a long moment, then turned and disappeared into the forest. Noah waited until he was certain he was alone again before continuing his examination. Among the horse remains, he found more shell casings and something else, a small metal cylinder with markings that sent a chill through him. A tracking device, military grade. Someone was monitoring these horses, tracking them, hunting them systematically. As Noah straightened, something caught his peripheral vision: movement on the ridge above. He ducked behind a fallen tree, peering carefully over it. Two men in unmarked black uniforms were making their way along the ridge, rifles slung over their shoulders. They moved with military precision, scanning the valley methodically. Noah remained motionless, controlling his breathing as they passed above his position. These weren't BLM officers or forest rangers. Their equipment was too sophisticated, their bearing too practiced. Once they had passed, Noah began making his way back toward his cabin, taking a different route to avoid detection. His mind raced with implications. Thornton's project, the specialized ammunition, the systematic tracking and killing of wild horses, it all pointed to something far more sinister than a luxury resort. As he crested the final ridge before his property came into view, Noah heard the distant sound of a helicopter. He dropped to the ground, using a juniper bush for cover, as the aircraft passed overhead, unmarked, matte black, definitely not civilian or standard government issue. The helicopter headed toward the Hammond claim, disappearing beyond the next ridge. Noah's cabin appeared exactly as he had left it. Stella was still there, grazing near the porch, seemingly unconcerned. She raised her head as he approached, nickering softly in what almost seemed like relief. "You knew, didn't you?" Noah said quietly. "You knew what was happening out there." Inside, Echo had managed to stand again and had dragged himself a few feet from his bed of blankets. The foal greeted Noah with a soft, wicker ears pricked forward with interest. Noah checked the wound, pleased to see continued improvement. The fever had broken, and Echo's eyes were brighter, more alert. The foal nuzzled Noah's hand as he worked, a gesture of trust that tightened something in Noah's chest. Later that evening, as Noah sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in shades of orange and purple, Stella approached closer than she ever had before. She stood at the bottom of the steps, regarding him steadily. "I saw what they did," Noah told her, feeling only slightly foolish for speaking to a horse, as if she could understand. "I'm sorry." Stella pawed at the ground once, then turned her head toward the north, where the Hammond claim lay beyond the ridge. When she looked back at Noah, the intelligence in her gaze seemed to hold a question. I don't know what to do yet, Noah admitted, but I'll figure it out. As darkness settled over the hills, Noah made a decision. Tomorrow he would seek out Sarah Medicine River and her father, Chief Nathan. If anyone would understand the significance of the wind's path and what its disruption might mean, it would be them. For tonight, though, he would keep vigil. Noah retrieved his shotgun and settled into a chair on the porch, watching the darkness for any sign of approaching danger. Inside the cabin, Echo slept peacefully, unaware of the forces gathering around them all. The mare, Stella, stood sentinel at the edge of the property, her silver coat ghostly in the moonlight, her gaze fixed on the northern horizon where her herd had died and from which new threats would surely come. And overhead, the Wyoming wind continued its ancient journey along paths older than human memory, carrying with it the whispers of wild things and the promise of coming storm. The Shoshone Reservation lay 20 miles east of White Ridge, nestled against foothills that rose gradually toward the distant mountains. Unlike the tourist-friendly Native American centers found elsewhere, this was simply home to those who had maintained their connection to this land for countless generations. Noah's truck bumped along the gravel road that led to the community center, a modest single-story building that served multiple purposes for the tribe. As he parked, he noticed children playing basketball on a nearby court, their laughter carrying on the morning air. Sarah Medicine River stood waiting by the entrance, her long black hair bound in a simple braid, wearing jeans and a denim jacket over a turquoise blouse. She seemed unsurprised by Noah's arrival, though he hadn't called ahead. Dr. Reed, she greeted him with a nod. I had a feeling you might come. Please, just Noah, he said, suddenly self-conscious about the title he'd abandoned years ago. Noah, then. She studied him with those perceptive eyes. My father's been expecting you. How could he be expecting me? I only decided to come this morning. Sarah smiled enigmatically. The old ways still work sometimes. Follow me. She led him through the community center, past rooms where elders taught young children traditional crafts and language. At the far end of the building, doors opened onto a garden area where an elderly man sat beneath a cottonwood tree, its new spring leaves rustling softly. Chief Nathan Medicine River had the weathered face of someone who had spent a lifetime under the open sky. Deep lines, framed eyes that held both wisdom and humor. Despite his advanced age, Noah guessed at least 70, he sat straight-backed on a simple wooden bench, dignity emanating from him like a physical force. Welcome, healer, Chief Nathan said, using the Shoshone word. The horses have found you, then. Noah glanced at Sarah questioningly. I didn't tell him, she said. Word travels differently here. Chief Nathan gestured to the space beside him. Sit, we have much to discuss. Noah sat feeling strangely like a student before a master. How did you know about the horses? The mare with the silver coat has been known to our people for many seasons, Chief Nathan replied. We call her Ghost Runner. She leads one of the last true wild herds that follow the wind's path. He looked directly at Noah. She is very selective about the humans she trusts. She brought her injured foal to my door, Noah said. I've been caring for it. Chief Nathan nodded. The old stories say that in times of great danger, the horse spirits will seek out those with the power to help them. His gaze was penetrating. You have healer's hands. Even when they tremble, they remember. Noah fought the urge to hide his hands, which had begun their familiar shaking. How do you know about that? The same way I know you've seen what is happening in the Northern Valley, Chief Nathan said. The same way I know Colonel Thornton's men are testing weapons where the wind's path runs. Sarah sat on her father's other side. We've been watching them for months. They're systematically targeting the wild herds, tracking their movements, testing their weapons on them. But why? Noah asked. What's the point? The official story is population control, Sarah said bitterly. Too many horses damaging the rangeland competing with cattle. That's not what I saw, Noah countered. These were organized field tests, military-grade ammunition. Chief Nathan's expression grew grave. The wind's path is ancient, older than any human claims to this land. It follows energy lines beneath the earth that our ancestors recognized thousands of years ago. The animals know these paths instinctively. The Hammond claim sits at a crucial junction, Sarah added. 4 different migration routes converge there, not just for horses, but for elk, deer, even birds. Thornton's Horizon Ranch project would block all of those routes, Chief Nathan continued. But that is only the surface reason. Beneath there is something more. Uranium, Sarah said flatly. Deposits were discovered near the Hammond claim back in the 1950s, but they were too expensive to extract then. Now with new technology and rising prices, you think Thornton is planning a mining operation disguised as a resort? Noah asked, the pieces starting to align in his mind. We believe so, Chief Nathan confirmed, but he needs all the surrounding land first, including yours. Noah thought of the military-style security he'd observed, the specialized ammunition, the tracking devices. This goes beyond mining. The weapons testing, the systematic approach, it's more like they're using the horses to test battlefield technology. Sarah and her father exchanged glances. Nexus Defense, Sarah said. It's a private military contractor that Thornton has connections with. They specialize in terrain denial systems and non-conventional deterrence. How do you know all this? Noah asked. We have allies, Chief Nathan said simply. People who recognize that when the wind's path is blocked, all life suffers. He leaned forward. The question now is, what will you do? Healer Ghost Runner chose you for a reason. Noah looked out across the reservation to the distant hills. For 5 years, he had hidden from the world, from responsibility, from the possibility of failing to save a life when it mattered most. Now a wild mare had forced him back into exactly that position. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I can't just stand by and watch this happen. Chief Nathan nodded, satisfied. That is a beginning. He reached into a pouch at his waist and withdrew a small object wrapped in soft leather. Take this. It belonged to a healer from generations past. Noah accepted the bundle and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a carved horse fetish made of green stone worn smooth by years of handling. It seemed to catch the sunlight in unusual ways, almost glowing from within. Jade, Chief Nathan explained, from the mountains far to the west. Our people traded for it many generations ago. It carries the spirit of healing and protection. I can't accept this, Noah protested. It's a tribal artifact. It goes where it is needed, Chief Nathan replied firmly. For now, that is with you. Sarah walked Noah back to his truck. They moved in comfortable silence until they reached the vehicle. There's something my father didn't tell you, she said. Something I think you should know. Noah waited, sensing her hesitation. The resort plans Thornton submitted to the county council include a memorial garden dedicated to Lieutenant Robert Thornton. Sarah's eyes were compassionate. Everyone in town knows there's history between you two, even if they don't know the details. Noah's hand tightened on his truck door. Robert was his son. He died under my care in Afghanistan. I thought it might be something like that. Sarah didn't push for details. Just be careful. Grief makes people unpredictable, especially when it hardens into something else over time. I will, Noah promised. Thank you, Sarah. As he drove back toward his cabin, Noah kept one hand on the jade horse fetish, its smooth surface somehow comforting against his palm. He thought about what Chief Nathan had said about Ghost Runner, choosing him specifically about healer's hands that remembered even when they trembled. For 5 years, he had been running from who he was, what he was trained to do. Maybe it was time to stop running. Echo's progress over the next few days was remarkable. The foal had graduated from standing briefly to taking tentative steps around the cabin, always careful with the injured frame, but showing increasing confidence. Noah had fashioned a small splint to provide additional support, and Echo had accepted it with only minimal resistance. Stella, or Ghost Runner, as the Shoshone called her, had established a routine of grazing near the cabin during the day and disappearing into the surrounding hills at night, only to return by dawn. Noah suspected she was monitoring her herd, perhaps keeping them away from the dangerous northern valley. On the 5th morning after Noah's visit to the reservation, he emerged from the cabin to find Ranger Davis's Forest Service truck parked in his driveway. The young ranger was leaning against it, looking troubled. Morning, Davis called as Noah approached. Hope you don't mind the early visit. Everything all right? Noah asked, immediately wary. Not exactly. Davis glanced toward the cabin. Mind if we talk inside? Noah hesitated. Echo was still in the cabin, and he wasn't sure how much he trusted Davis yet. Sensing his reluctance, Davis added, It's about the wild horses and Thornton's operation. That decided it. Noah nodded and led the way inside where Echo was curled up on his bed of blankets. The foal raised its head at their entrance, ears pricked with interest. Davis stopped short. So it's true, Sarah said you were rehabilitating an injured Mustang, but he moved closer, examining Echo with professional interest. Gunshot wound. Yes, Noah confirmed. Military-grade ammunition. The mayor brought him to my door. Davis knelt beside Echo, who sniffed his outstretched hand cautiously before allowing a brief touch. Never seen a wild foal this comfortable around humans. He looked up at Noah. You know, keeping him is technically illegal without proper permits. I'm not keeping him, Noah said. I'm healing him. Once he's strong enough, he and his mother will be free to go. Davis nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. The mother's still around, too. She comes and goes, watches from a distance mostly. Ghost Runner, Davis said, surprising Noah. The Shoshone told me about her, said she's special. You've been talking to Chief Nathan. Sarah introduced us. Davis stood, his expression turning serious. That's partly why I'm here. I've been investigating the horse shootings on my own time since my superiors keep shutting down official inquiries. What I've found, it's not good. Noah gestured toward the coffee pot. Tell me. As Noah prepared coffee, Davis explained what he'd discovered. His investigation had led him to property records, permit applications, and environmental impact statements for the Horizon Ranch project. On paper, everything looks legitimate, Davis said, accepting a mug of coffee. Luxury resort hunting expeditions, conservation areas set aside, but there are inconsistencies. Like what? The environmental impact statement completely omits any mention of the wild horse migration routes. The water usage estimates are way above what a resort would need, even a large one. And the security infrastructure is extensive. Military grade, Noah suggested. Exactly. Davis took a sip of coffee. Then there's this. He pulled out his phone and showed Noah a satellite image. This was taken by a wildlife research drone last month. Look at the Hammond claim. Noah studied the image. What had once been an abandoned mining site now showed significant development, new road structures, and what appeared to be a large excavation. None of this is in the official plans, Davis continued. I checked with the county. According to them, ground hasn't even been broken on the Horizon project yet. So Thornton's building something else entirely, Noah said, and using the resort as cover. That's my guess. Davis put away his phone. But I can't prove anything without getting closer, and the whole area is locked down tight. Private security everywhere, no trespassing signs. I can't get a warrant without more evidence. Noah considered this. What about the horse shootings that's clearly illegal? Need to catch them in the act or find bodies with bullets still in them that can be traced. Davis looked pointedly at Echo. That foal would be evidence. He's not evidence, Noah said sharply. He's a patient. Davis raised his hands placatingly. I understand. I'm just saying we need something concrete to stop whatever Thornton is doing up there. Echo chose that moment to struggle to his feet, wobbling slightly before finding his balance. The foal limped over to Noah, nudging his hand with a soft muzzle. He trusts you, Davis observed. Trust goes both ways, Noah replied gently, stroking Echo's neck. I promised I'd help him, and I will. Davis watched the interaction thoughtfully. You know, I've been in wildlife management for 6 years. Never seen anything like this, a wild Mustang foal bonding with a human this way. It's almost like what? Like he knows something we don't. Davis shook his head, perhaps embarrassed by the fanciful thought. Anyway, I should get going. If my superiors find out I'm investigating off-book, I'll be transferred faster than you can say administrative leave. As they walked back outside, Stella appeared at the edge of the property, watching them intently. That's her, isn't it? Davis asked, his voice hushed with awe. Ghost Runner. That's what the Shoshone call, but Noah confirmed. I've been calling her Stella. Davis chuckled. Fitting either way. He turned to Noah with sudden seriousness. Be careful, Reed. Thornton has a lot of influence around here. And if what we suspect is true, he has resources and connections far beyond what a retired colonel should have. I'll keep that in mind. After Davis left, Noah approached Stella cautiously. The mayor had grown more comfortable with his presence, but still maintained a certain distance. Today, however, she stood her ground as he drew near. We've got allies, Noah told her softly, and we're going to need them. Stella's ears flicked forward, her intelligent eyes fixed on his face. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and gently pressed her muzzle against Noah's chest just over his heart. The touch lasted only a moment before she backed away again, but it left Noah with a profound sense of connection. Something was changing between them, a trust building that transcended the normal boundaries between wild and tame. And with that trust came responsibility. The town council meeting is held in White Ridge's small civic center, a repurposed school building from the 1950s. The main meeting room was packed beyond capacity, with folding chairs arranged in tight rows and people standing along the walls. The subject of tonight's discussion, the final approval for Phase 1 of the Horizon Ranch project, had drawn virtually every resident of the town and surrounding countryside. Noah slipped in just as the meeting was beginning, finding a spot near the back where he could observe without being immediately noticed. He spotted Sarah sitting with a group of Shoshone tribal members and Davis in his Forest Service uniform near the front. Oliver Finley sat alone in a corner, nursing what looked suspiciously like a flask beneath his jacket. Mayor Jenkins, a portly man with a perpetual air of forced joviality, called the meeting to order. Folks, we've got a full agenda tonight, but I know what you're all here for, so let's get right to it. Colonel Thornton, would you like to present the latest updates on the Horizon Ranch project? Thornton rose from his seat in the front row, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit that set him apart from the flannel and denim that dominated the room. He moved to the small podium with military precision, arranging his notes before looking up to address the crowd. Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, council members, and citizens of White Ridge. His voice carried authority honed by years of commanding troops. As many of you know, the Horizon Ranch project represents a turning point for our community, a chance to bring sustainable economic growth, jobs, and opportunity to a region that has seen too little of all three in recent decades. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the audience. Tonight, I'm pleased to present the finalized plans for Phase 1, which includes the main lodge staff accommodations and initial recreational facilities. Thornton gestured to a large display board showing architectural renderings of an impressive log and stone structure nestled against a hillside. Construction will begin next month, providing immediate jobs for local contractors. He continued outlining the projected employment numbers, tax benefits, infrastructure improvements. The presentation was polished, persuasive, and Noah suspected largely fictional. Now I know some concerns have been raised about environmental impact. Thornton said, his tone shifting to one of reassurance. I want to address those directly. Horizon Ranch is committed to responsible stewardship of the land. Our environmental impact statement, which has been approved by all relevant agencies, details our extensive conservation efforts. Noah noticed Davis shift uncomfortably in his seat. As for the wild horse population, Thornton continued, we recognize their cultural and ecological significance. However, we must also acknowledge the reality of overpopulation and the damage unmanaged herds can cause to rangeland. That's why we're working with the Bureau of Land Management on a comprehensive management plan that balances conservation with necessary population control. At this, several of the Shoshone tribal members exchanged glances. In closing, Thornton said, I'd like to share something personal. His voice softened, taking on a quality Noah had never heard from him before. Many of you know that I lost my son, Lieutenant Robert Thornton, in Afghanistan 7 years ago. Robert loved this country, not just America, but this specific piece of Wyoming. He dreamed of building something here that would honor the land and the people who call it home. Noah felt a tightness in his chest as Thornton continued. Phase 1 includes a memorial garden dedicated to Robert and to all the men and women from White Ridge who have served our nation. It's my hope that Horizon Ranch will be not just an economic boon, but a place of healing and remembrance. Thornton's eyes swept the room, briefly locking with Noah's before moving on. Thank you. Applause followed as Thornton returned to his seat. Mayor Jenkins returned to the podium, beaming. Thank you, Colonel. Now, before we move to the council vote, we'll open the floor for public comments. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes. Several locals spoke in favor of the project, citing the need for jobs and economic development. Then Sarah stood and moved to the microphone. My name is Sarah Medicine River, and I speak for the Shoshone Cultural Preservation Council. Her voice was calm, but carried an underlying intensity. The area known as the Hammond Claim and surrounding lands has been sacred to our people for countless generations. It sits at the junction of four ancient migration routes, what our people call the Wind's Path. Sarah held up a map different from the official ones Thornton had presented. These routes are still used today by wild horses, elk, deer, and numerous bird species. The proposed development would permanently block these pathways with devastating ecological consequences. Thornton leaned over to whisper something to Mayor Jenkins, who nodded. Furthermore, Sarah continued, our council has evidence that significant archaeological sites exist within the proposed development area sites that were not properly surveyed or reported in the environmental impact statement. Mayor Jenkins cleared his throat. Ms. Medicine River, while we respect your cultural concerns, the official archaeological survey found no significant sites in the development area. The official survey was incomplete, Sarah countered. We've documented at least 3 sites containing petroglyphs and artifacts dating back over 5,000 years. Murmurs spread through the crowd. We'll certainly take that under advisement, Mayor Jenkins said dismissively. Any other comments? To Noah's surprise, Oliver Finley rose from his seat and made his way unsteadily to the microphone. A ripple of whispers followed him. The disgraced veterinarian rarely appeared at public gatherings anymore. Name's Oliver Finley, for those who don't remember or are too young to know, he began, his voice raspy but clear. Served as this county's large animal vet for 38 years before, well before. He straightened his shoulders, seeming to gather dignity as he spoke. I've examined those lands extensively over the decades. What Ms. Medicine River says is correct. It's a critical wildlife corridor. But there's something else the council should know. Oliver pulled a small plastic bag from his pocket. Inside was a metal fragment, similar to the one Noah had extracted from Echo's leg. This was removed from a wild horse that was shot on federal land near the Hammond Claim. It's not standard ammunition, it's a specialized round designed for maximum tissue damage. Military grade. The room fell silent. Now I may be a washed-up old drunk. Oliver continued, a hint of defiance in his voice. But I know weapons testing when I see it. Someone's using those wild horses for target practice. And not just any someone with access to restricted military technology. Mayor Jenkins looked uncomfortable. Dr. Finley, that's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence of who might be responsible? I'm getting to that, Oliver said. The timing of these shootings coincides precisely with the preliminary work at the Hammond Claim work that began months before permits were officially issued. All eyes turned to Thornton, who remained impassive. Thank you, Dr. Finley, Mayor Jenkins said quickly. I think we should move on. I'm not finished, Oliver insisted. The council needs to postpone any vote until a full investigation. Your time is up, the mayor interrupted. We need to proceed with the agenda. As Oliver reluctantly returned to his seat, Davis stood and moved to the microphone. Michael Davis, U.S. Forest Service. I'd like to officially request that the council delay voting until we can investigate the allegations of wildlife poaching on federal land adjacent to the proposed development. Mayor Jenkins looked increasingly uncomfortable. Ranger Davis, with all due respect, this meeting is about the development proposal, not wildlife management issues. The two are connected, Davis insisted. If protected species are being deliberately harmed to clear the way for development, that constitutes a federal offense. Thornton finally stood. Mr. Mayor, if I may. Without waiting for permission, he approached the microphone. These are serious allegations, and of course Horizon Ranch condemns any illegal hunting or harassment of wildlife. We would fully support an investigation into these incidents. His reasonable tone seemed to calm the room. However, Thornton continued, delaying the entire project based on unsubstantiated claims would be economically devastating. Jobs and investments are already lined up. I propose that the council approve Phase 1 as planned, with the understanding that if any evidence of wrongdoing emerges, we will immediately reassess. Mayor Jenkins nodded enthusiastically. A sensible compromise. Thank you, Colonel. Any other comments before we vote? Noah found himself moving toward the microphone before he had consciously decided to speak. As he passed Thornton, their eyes met briefly, recognition, challenge, and something deeper, more personal, passing between them. My name is Noah Reed. He began, his voice rough from disuse in public settings. I live on the northern edge of Carson Ridge, bordering the Hammond claim. A murmur went through the crowd, the reclusive Dr. Reed finally appearing in public. 5 days ago, a wild mare brought her injured foal to my door. Noah continued. The foal had been shot with a specialized round, the same type Dr. Finley just described. He pulled the jade horse fetish from his pocket, drawing strength from its smooth surface. The mare chose to trust me with her offspring's life, despite being wild and having every reason to fear humans. That trust means something. Noah looked directly at Thornton as he continued. I've treated the foal. It's recovering. But others weren't so fortunate. In the valley north of my property, I found at least 5 dead horses, all shot with similar ammunition, all wearing small tracking devices of military design. Gasps and whispers spread through the room. Someone is systematically targeting these animals, Noah said, his voice gaining strength, testing weapons on them, tracking their movements, driving them away from their traditional routes. Mr. Reed, Mayor Jenkins interrupted, these are very serious accusations. Do you have any evidence of who might be responsible? Noah hesitated. He had suspicions, but no concrete proof linking Thornton directly to the shootings. I'm presenting evidence of what I witnessed. I'll leave it to proper authorities to determine who's responsible. Thornton's expression remained neutral, but Noah could see the tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. I would add, Noah continued, that I have no intention of selling my property for the Horizon Project or any other development. The land I own includes a significant portion of what the Shoshone people call the Wind's Path. I intend to keep it open for the wildlife that depends on it. With that, Noah stepped away from the microphone and returned to his place at the back of the room. He could feel Thornton's gaze following him. The council voted 3-2 to approve Phase 1 of the Horizon Ranch project, with the stipulation that concerns about wildlife and archaeological sites would be further investigated. As the meeting dispersed, Noah found himself surrounded by Sarah Davis and Oliver. That took guts, Davis said, coming forward like that. It won't stop him, Noah replied, watching Thornton across the room, surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. But at least it's on public record now. Sarah touched his arm lightly. Thank you for speaking about the Wind's Path. My father will be pleased. Oliver looked more sober than when the meeting had started. Watch your back, Reed. Thornton doesn't take opposition lightly. Never has. As if sensing their discussion, Thornton looked up and caught Noah's eye. The colonel excused himself from his group and made his way across the room. The others tensed, but Noah stood his ground. Star, Reed, Thornton said when he reached them, his voice pitched low enough that only their small group could hear. Quite a performance. I didn't think you had it in you anymore, standing up, taking a moral position. This isn't about morality, Thornton, Noah replied evenly. It's about the law, wildlife poaching, unauthorized weapons testing, environmental violations. Always so righteous. Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know, I've often wondered how you sleep at night, given what happened to Robert. But I see you found a convenient cause to ease your conscience. Noah felt the familiar guilt rising but pushed it down. Robert's death was a tragedy of war, not my choice. You know that. Do I? Thornton's voice hardened. You made a choice that day, Doctor. You chose to save others instead of my son. Now you're choosing animals over progress, over jobs, over a memorial that would give Robert's death meaning. Robert wouldn't want a memorial built on lies and destruction, Noah said quietly. Something dangerous flashed in Thornton's eyes. Don't presume to tell me what my son would want. He straightened, composing himself. You've made your position clear, as have I. I respect your right to keep your property, of course. But consider this friendly advice. Accidents happen in the wilderness. People go missing, especially people who live alone far from help. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving a chill in his wake. Did he just threaten you? Davis asked incredulously. Pretty explicitly, Oliver confirmed. Sarah's expression was grave. You shouldn't go back to your cabin alone, at least not tonight. I have to, Noah said. Echo needs care and... He didn't finish the thought, but they understood. Stella would be waiting and keeping watch. I'll follow you, Davis decided. Park nearby, just as a precaution. Noah wanted to refuse to insist he could handle himself, but the determined looks on their faces stopped him. For the first time in years, people were concerned about him were acting as friends rather than distant acquaintances. All right, he conceded, but just for tonight. As they left the Civic Center, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. He had publicly opposed, Thornton had declared his intention to protect the wind's path. There would be consequences. In his pocket, the jade horse fetish seemed to pulse with warmth, as if responding to his resolve. Noah wrapped his fingers around it, drawing strength from its ancient presence. Whatever came next, he would face it. For Echo and Stella. For the wind's path. For himself. Versus. The night passed uneventfully with Davis's Forest Service truck parked discreetly down the road from Noah's cabin. By morning, Noah had convinced the ranger that he would be fine on his own, and Davis reluctantly departed for his regular duties, promising to check in later. Inside the cabin, Echo continued to show remarkable improvement. The foal could now put some weight on the injured leg, though he still favored it. His appetite was strong and his eyes bright with curiosity and intelligence. He followed Noah around the cabin, nickering softly for attention whenever Noah was out of sight for too long. Stella maintained her routine of visiting during the day and disappearing at night, though she now ventured closer to the cabin, sometimes coming right up to the porch steps. She would stand there watching through the window as Noah tended to echo her gaze, both vigilant and trusting. 3 days after the town meeting, Noah was chopping firewood in the yard when he noticed Stella behaving strangely. The mare was pacing at the edge of the property, repeatedly looking toward the northern ridge, then back at Noah. Her ears were pricked forward, her posture alert. Noah set down his axe and walked toward her. "What is it, girl?" Stella nickered urgently, paving the ground with a front hoof. Then she took a few steps toward the ridge before stopping to look back at him. "You want me to follow you?" Noah asked, feeling slightly foolish for talking to a horse, as if she could understand complex questions. But Stella's behavior seemed to confirm his suspicion. She moved a few more steps, then stopped again, looking back expectantly. Noah hesitated. The last time he'd ventured toward the northern ridge, he'd discovered the dead horses and narrowly avoided Thornton's security personnel. Going back could be dangerous, especially now that he'd publicly opposed the Horizon Project. But Stella's urgency was unmistakable. Something was happening, something she felt Noah needed to see. "Let me get my gear," he told her, hurrying back to the cabin. Inside, Echo greeted him with a soft whicker. Noah quickly checked the foal's bandage and made sure he had fresh water and food. "I've got to go out for a bit," he told Echo, stroking the foal's neck. "You stay here, rest that leg." Echo bumped his muzzle against Noah's chest as if understanding. Noah gathered his day pack, adding water, energy, bars, binoculars, and his service pistol. After a moment's consideration, he also took his medical kit. Something about Stella's behavior suggested urgency, perhaps another injured animal. When he emerged from the cabin, Stella was waiting impatiently. As soon as she saw him ready, she set off at a brisk walk toward the ridge, occasionally looking back to ensure he was following. They traveled for nearly an hour, moving deeper into the wilderness than Noah had ventured before. Stella set a pace that was challenging but manageable, always staying just visible ahead of him, leading him over game trails and through stands of aspen and pine. The terrain became increasingly rugged as they ascended the northern slopes. Noah recognized some landmarks from his maps, but realized they were heading towards an area he hadn't explored, a secluded valley beyond the Hammond claim. As they crested a ridge, Stella stopped, waiting for Noah to catch up. Below them lay a hidden valley sheltered by steep slopes on three sides. A small stream wound through its center, bordered by rich spring grass and wildflowers just beginning to bloom. The valley floor was perhaps half a mile across, a perfect natural sanctuary, and it was filled with wild horses. Noah raised his binoculars, his breath catching at the sight. At least 30 Mustangs grazed peacefully in the valley mares, with this year's foals juveniles from previous seasons, and a magnificent stallion with a coat the color of burnished copper, the same one that Noah had glimpsed during his previous expedition. "Is this your herd?" Noah asked Stella softly. "Is this where you've been going at night?" Stella nickered quietly as if in confirmation. Then she nudged Noah's shoulder, urging him forward down the slope toward the valley. As they descended, the copper stallion raised his head, spotting them immediately. He let out a warning call, and the herd became alert mares gathering their foals close. Stella responded with a series of soft, nickering sounds, seemingly communicating with the stallion. The tension in the herd eased slightly, though they remained watchful of the human in their midst. When they reached the valley floor, Stella led Noah toward a cluster of rocks near the stream. The copper stallion approached cautiously, eyeing Noah with clear suspicion, but not aggression. The rest of the herd maintained a respectful distance. Noah realized that Stella occupied a position of importance within the herd hierarchy, not the lead mare, perhaps, but respected enough that her judgment regarding this human was being tentatively accepted. As they neared the rocks, Stella stopped abruptly, pawing at the ground and looking intently at Noah. He scanned the area, trying to understand what she wanted him to see. Then he spotted it, a dark shape lying partially hidden among the rocks. Another horse, a young mare, was down and in obvious distress. Noah moved forward slowly, medical instincts taking over. The injured mare was a beautiful bay, perhaps 3 years old. She was lying on her side, breathing rapidly, her coat slick with sweat. As Noah drew closer, he could see the cause of her distress, a bullet wound in her shoulder, similar to Echo's, but more recent and potentially more serious. The copper stallion paced nervously as Noah knelt beside the injured mare. Stella positioned herself between them, as if mediating, ensuring the stallion didn't perceive Noah as a threat. "Easy, girl," Noah murmured to the wounded mare. "Let me help you." She rolled her eye toward him, showing white with fear, but was too weak to resist as he gently examined the wound. The bullet had entered the muscle of her shoulder but hadn't exited. It needed to be removed before infection set in. Noah opened his medical kit, grateful he had brought it along. The procedure would be challenging in field conditions, but the alternative was watching the young mare die slowly from infection and blood poisoning. "I need to remove the bullet," he told Stella again, feeling strange for speaking to a horse, as if she understood. "She won't like it. Can you keep the others calm?" As if in response, Stella moved to stand at the injured mare's head, gently nuzzling her neck and making soft sounds that seemed to soothe the frightened animal. Noah prepared a local anesthetic, not ideal for a horse, but better than nothing. His hands trembled slightly as he filled the syringe, the old familiar doubt creeping in. What if he couldn't save her? What if his hands failed him? When it mattered most, the jade horse fetish pressed against his leg from his pocket. Impulsively, Noah took it out and placed it on a flat rock beside his medical kit. Its green surface caught the sunlight, seeming to glow with inner life. As Noah began the procedure, he felt a strange calm settle over him. His hands steadied, moving with the precision that had once made him one of the best veterinary surgeons in the military. The bullet was lodged in muscle tissue, having missed major blood vessels by millimeters, a lucky break. The young mare flinched and trembled as Noah worked, but Stella's presence seemed to keep her from panicking. The copper stallion watched from a short distance, snorting occasionally but making no move to interfere. After what felt like hours but was likely only 20 minutes, Noah extracted the bullet, another specialized round, like the one he'd removed from Echo. He cleaned and disinfected the wound, applied antibiotics, and bandaged it as best he could. "There," he told the injured mare, stroking her neck gently. "That should help." The young horse's breathing had already steadied, the immediate pain relieved. She wouldn't be able to travel for several days, but if infection didn't set in, she would recover. Noah sat back on his heels, suddenly exhausted. The operation had demanded intense concentration, bringing him fully back into his role as a healer for the first time in years. Stella nudged his shoulder gently, as if in approval or thanks. "You're welcome," Noah said softly. As he packed up his medical kit, he examined the bullet more closely. It was identical to the one he'd removed from Echo, a specialized round designed for maximum tissue damage while remaining traceable within the target. The kind of ammunition used for weapons testing, not hunting. But what caught Noah's attention was a small marking near the base, a stylized N over a horizontal line. The logo of Nexus Defense, just as Sarah had suggested. Noah pocketed the bullet as evidence, then collected the jade horse fetish from the rock where he'd placed it. As his fingers closed around it, he felt an odd sensation, a warmth that seemed to flow from the stone into his hand, up his arm, and through his body. For the first time in 5 years, his hands weren't shaking at all. The copper stallion approached, moving with deliberate caution until he stood before Noah. His dark eyes held an intelligence that rivaled Stella's, assessing the human who had helped one of his herd. After a long moment, the stallion dipped his head slightly, not quite a bow, but an acknowledgement. Then he turned and moved back to the herd, resuming his watchful position. Stella remained at the injured mare's side, clearly intending to stay with her until she could travel. She looked at Noah, then toward the path back to his cabin, as if telling him he could return home. "I'll come back tomorrow," Noah promised. "Bring more antibiotics for her." As he hiked back toward his cabin, Noah felt different, changed in some fundamental way. He had used his skills to save a life, and his hands hadn't betrayed him. The herd had accepted his help, even the cautious stallion. But more importantly, he had glimpsed the fullness of what was at stake. The hidden valley held not just a few scattered Mustangs, but an entire thriving herd, one of the last truly wild populations in the region. If Thornton's plans proceeded, their sanctuary would be destroyed, their ancient migration routes blocked forever. The jade horse fetish was warm in his pocket, a reminder of Chief Nathan's words. The wind's path is ancient, older than any human claims to this land. Noah's resolve hardened. This was no longer just about Echo and Stella. It was about preserving something ancient and irreplaceable, a pattern of life that had existed for thousands of years before humans drew their arbitrary boundaries across the land. As his cabin came into view, Noah saw Echo standing at the window watching for his return. The foal nickered excitedly when he spotted Noah approaching. "I'm back, buddy," Noah called. "Wait until you hear what your mom showed me today." And for the first time since Afghanistan, Noah Reed felt something he had thought forever lost, a sense of purpose. A mission worth fighting for. A reason for his healer's hands to remain steady. The following morning brought ominous clouds gathering over the northern hills, promising spring rain. Noah stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching Echo practice walking circuits around the cabin yard. The foal's progress was remarkable. Though still favoring his injured leg, he moved with increasing confidence each day. Noah's satellite phone rang, a rare occurrence that immediately put him on alert. Few people had the number. He answered tersely. "It's Davis." The ranger's voice was tight with urgency. "You need to get to town, now." "What's happened?" "They arrested Oliver last night. Illegal possession of firearms and military equipment." Noah's grip tightened on the phone. "That's ridiculous. Oliver doesn't—" "They found an unregistered rifle and restricted ammunition in his house during a search. The same type used on the horses." "A setup," Noah said, the pieces falling into place. "To discredit him after the town meeting." "Almost certainly. But it gets worse. They're using this to fast-track approval for the next phase of Horizon. Emergency meeting at noon. The mayor saying Oliver's false accusations were delaying vital economic development." Noah glanced at Echo, who had stopped his exercise to watch Noah with those intelligent amber eyes. "I'll be there. Call Sarah." After ending the call, Noah knelt beside Echo. "I have to go into town. You'll be safe here." The foal nudged his hand as if understanding. From the edge of the property, Stella appeared, moving with purpose toward the cabin. Noah had left her with the injured mare in the hidden valley yesterday. Her return now suggested something had changed. "Is she all right?" Noah asked as Stella approached. "The mare from yesterday." Stella nickered softly, her ears forward. She seemed less agitated than when she had led him to the injured horse, which Noah took as a good sign. "I need to go into town," he told her. "Oliver's in trouble. Thornton's making his move." The mare tilted her head slightly in a gesture Noah had come to recognize as attentiveness. After a moment, she moved toward Echo, nuzzling her foal gently. Then she looked back at Noah as if to say, "Go, we'll be here." It still struck Noah as extraordinary, this level of communication with wild animals. Yet over the past week, he had come to accept it as real. Whatever bond had formed between them transcended normal human-animal relationships. He gathered what he needed: the bullet extracted from the bay mare, his notes on Echo's treatment, and the jade horse fetish that hadn't left his possession since Chief Nathan gave it to him. As he prepared to leave, he took one last glance at mother and son, now grazing peacefully near the cabin. "I'll be back soon," he promised. "Au revoir." White Ridge was transformed from its usual sleepy atmosphere. News of Oliver's arrest had spread, and people gathered in small clusters along the main street, conversations pausing as Noah's truck rumbled past. He parked in front of the county sheriff's office, a modest brick building that also housed the small jail. Inside, the reception area was empty except for Deputy Wilson, a young officer who had moved to White Ridge from Cheyenne the previous year. "I'm here to see Oliver Finley," Noah said without preamble. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "Dr. Finley isn't allowed visitors right now, Dr. Reed. Sheriff's orders." "On what grounds?" "Investigation is ongoing, evidence processing." Wilson wouldn't meet Noah's eyes. You should probably talk to Sheriff Brannigan. Where is he, Paul? Meeting with Mayor Jenkins and some others at the Civic Center, preparing for the emergency council session. Noah leaned forward. Deputy, you and I both know Oliver Finley isn't keeping illegal firearms. Someone's setting him up. Wilson glanced toward the door to the cell area, then back at Noah. Look, I can't let you see him, but he lowered his voice. The search warrant came directly from the state police, requested by someone with serious connections. The whole thing felt off, middle of the night, specific information about where to look. What did they find exactly? Modified AR-15 military-grade ammunition identical to slugs found in those wild horses and some kind of tracking devices. Wilson shook his head, all hidden in a panel behind his bookshelf. Place most cops wouldn't even think to check without very specific information. And Oliver's explanation says he's never seen any of it before, that someone planted it. Wilson sighed. Problem is with his history, the drinking, the lost license. His credibility isn't great. Noah nodded his understanding. Thanks, Deputy. Outside, Noah found Sarah waiting beside his truck, her expression grave. They won't let me see him either, she said. My father is trying to contact friends in the state government, but... She shrugged, indicating the long odds. This is just the beginning, Noah said. Thornton's eliminating opposition. Oliver first, then probably Davis. Eventually us. The emergency meeting is clearly a railroad job. They'll approve everything Thornton wants, while Oliver's accusations are tainted by his arrest. Noah checked his watch. We have 2 hours before the meeting. I need to talk to Chief Nathan first. Then we need to find Davis. So I have. Chief Nathan was waiting for them at the Reservation Community Center, sitting beneath the same cottonwood tree where Noah had first met him. Despite the tension of the situation, the elder's demeanor remained calm, centered. So it has begun, he said, as Noah and Sarah approached. The old pattern repeats itself. First they discredit, then they destroy. You don't seem surprised, Noah observed. The wind whispered warnings last night. Chief Nathan gestured for them to sit. Tell me what you have learned. Noah recounted everything: Oliver's arrest, the planted evidence, the emergency meeting. Then he told Chief Nathan about Stella leading him to the hidden valley, the herd and the injured mare. You removed another bullet, Chief Nathan said, and your hands did not tremble. Noah looked down at his steady hands, still somewhat surprised by this himself. No, they didn't. The jade horse is working, the elder said with satisfaction. The healer's spirit is returning to you. I brought evidence, Noah said, producing the bullet extracted from the bay mare. It bears the Nexus Defense logo the private military contractor Thornton is connected with. Chief Nathan examined the bullet without touching it. This alone will not be enough. Thornton will claim it was planted, just as Oliver claims about the weapons in his home. Then what can we do? Sarah asked. They're going to approve the project today. Approval on paper is not the same as action on the land, Chief Nathan said. The wind's path has defended itself for thousands of years, but it requires human allies. He fixed his gaze on Noah. You found the hidden valley. The copper stallion acknowledged you. Ghost Runner trusts you with her foal. These are not coincidences. What are you saying? That you were brought here for this moment, healer. 5 years ago, when you chose this remote place to hide from the world, you were actually being guided to where you would be needed most. Noah wanted to dismiss the idea as mystical thinking, but something in him responded to the elder's words. His arrival in this specific corner of Wyoming had indeed felt more like answering a call than making a random choice. What do we do now? He asked. You must expose the truth in a way that cannot be denied or covered up. Chief Nathan's expression turned shrewd. The emergency council meeting provides that opportunity. Many witnesses, official record. But we need more than just the bullet, Sarah pointed out. We need irrefutable evidence. Chief Nathan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a thumb drive. This contains satellite images of the Hammond claim taken over the past 6 months. They show construction that matches no approved plans vehicles with Nexus Defense markings and evidence of weapons testing. How did you get these? Noah asked, surprised. A small smile crossed the elder's face. We may live by the old ways, but we are not ignorant of the new ones. And the Shoshone Nation has friends in many places, including environmental monitoring organizations with private satellites. Sarah took the thumb drive. This helps, but we still need to connect it directly to Thornton. For that, Chief Nathan said, you need your other ally. Davis. Noah nodded. But where is he? He called me this morning, but I haven't been able to reach him since. The ranger went to gather his own evidence. Chief Nathan said, the wind tells me he is in danger. Noah stood. I need to find him, if Thornton's people realize he's collecting evidence. Go, Chief Nathan agreed. Sarah will prepare for the council meeting. I will gather our people. As Noah turned to leave, Chief Nathan called after him. Remember, healer, the wind's path is not just a trail on the land. It is a path of the spirit. Trust what it shows you. Noah drove his truck along the Forest Service road that led to the Hammond claim, scanning for any sign of Davis's vehicle. The ranger had mentioned he was going to document activity at the site, which seemed increasingly dangerous given Oliver's arrest. About 2 miles from the boundary of the claim, Noah spotted Davis's Forest Service truck, hidden among a stand of pines pulled well off the road. He parked beside it and found it empty, doors locked, no sign of struggle. Noah checked his watch, just over an hour until the emergency meeting. He needed to find Davis and get back to town. The jade horse fetish in his pockets, he seemed to grow warmer as he considered his options. Following a hunch, he took it out and held it in his palm, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he knew which direction to go. Moving with the quiet efficiency of his military training, Noah followed a game trail that led toward the Hammond claim. After about 15 minutes, he reached a vantage point that overlooked the site. What he saw confirmed their suspicions. The resort construction was clearly a cover for something else. Heavy equipment had excavated a large area with concrete bunkers being installed underground. Armed security personnel patrolled the perimeter, and Noah recognized the distinctive black SUVs of Nexus Defense parked near temporary buildings. He raised his binoculars, scanning the site methodically. There at the far edge of the cleared area was Davis being escorted by 2 armed guards toward one of the buildings. The ranger was walking under his own power, but appeared to be under duress. Noah needed to act, but charging in would be suicide. He needed help. His satellite phone had no signal here, likely jammed by equipment at the site. Noah was about to retreat to find better reception when a soft sound behind him made him freeze. He turned slowly to find Stella standing just a few yards away, watching him intently. The mare had followed him from the cabin, moving so silently he hadn't detected her presence until now. Stella, he whispered, how did you find me? The mare approached, nudging his shoulder gently. Then she looked toward the Hammond claim. Ears forward, nostrils flaring as she caught the scents from below. Davis is in trouble, Noah told her. I need to help him, but I can't do it alone. Stella pawed the ground once, then turned and began walking along the ridge, pausing to look back at Noah expectantly. You want me to follow you? He asked, remembering how she had led him to the hidden valley and the injured mare. The mare nickered softly, continuing along the ridge. Noah followed, trusting her instincts more completely than he would have thought possible a week ago. They traveled about half a mile along the ridgeline before Stella led him down a steep, narrow trail that descended toward the Hammond claim from a different angle. As they drew closer to the site, Noah could hear the rumble of heavy equipment and the occasional shout of workers. Stella stopped at the edge of the tree line, just out of sight of the cleared area. She pawed the ground emphatically, then looked at Noah. You want me to wait here, he guessed. The mare snorted softly, then turned and disappeared into the forest, moving with silent purpose. Noah found cover behind a fallen log, maintaining a view of the site while staying hidden. He wasn't sure what Stella intended, but he had learned to trust her. 10 minutes passed. Then from the far side of the Hammond claim, a commotion erupted. Security personnel were shouting and running toward the northern perimeter. Through his binoculars, Noah saw the cause. The copper stallion and several members of the wild herd had appeared at the edge of the cleared area, running back and forth along the tree line. The stallion reared dramatically, forelegs pawing the air, his copper coat gleaming in the sunlight. It was a magnificent display and a perfect distraction. With most of the security drawn to the northern perimeter, Noah seized his opportunity. He moved quickly along the tree line to the temporary building where Davis had been taken. A single guard remained at the door, his attention divided between his post and the commotion with the horses. Noah circled behind the building, looking for another entrance. Finding none, he prepared to confront the guard directly when suddenly Stella appeared at the edge of the clearing, directly in the guard's line of sight. The mare stood proudly, her silver-gray coat almost shimmering. The guards stared, momentarily transfixed by the unexpected appearance of this solitary horse. Noah moved swiftly, closing the distance before the guard could react. A quick strike to the pressure point at the base of the skull, and the man collapsed unconscious. Noah caught him before he hit the ground, dragging him around the corner of the building. Inside, he found Davis zip-tied to a chair, a bruise forming on his cheekbone. A laptop on the table showed the ranger had been reviewing files, damning files from what Noah could glimpse when he was caught. Reed, Davis looked up in disbelief. How did you? Long story, Noah said quickly, cutting the zip ties with his pocket knife. Involves horses. We need to move now. Davis grabbed the laptop. We need this. It has everything: internal communications about the weapons testing, Thornton's agreement with Nexus Defense, environmental reports they've suppressed. Can you walk? Yeah, they just roughed me up a bit. They slipped out the back of the building. The distraction at the northern perimeter was still ongoing, with more security personnel rushing to deal with the wild horses that continued their display just out of reach. What the hell is happening over there? Davis asked as they made their way along the tree line. Friends, Noah said simply. They had almost reached the trail where Stella had led Noah down when shouts behind them indicated their escape had been discovered. A warning shot cracked through the air. Run! Noah pushed Davis ahead of him up the trail. They scrambled up the steep path, bullets striking trees around them. At the top, Davis stumbled, nearly dropping the laptop. Noah caught him, hauling him upright as they continued along the ridge. The sound of engines roaring to life below told them the pursuit would soon intensify. They needed to reach the vehicles before Thornton's security cut them off. As they rounded a bend in the trail, Stella appeared before them, nickering urgently. Beside her stood the copper stallion, his sides heaving from his exertions at the perimeter. What the pam? Davis began. Don't ask, Noah interrupted. Just follow them. The two horses led them along a different route than Noah had taken earlier, a narrow game trail that wound through dense forest where vehicles couldn't follow. They moved at a grueling pace, the horses always just ahead, guiding them away from danger. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only 20 minutes, they emerged near where their vehicles were parked. The sounds of pursuit had faded, but Noah knew it wouldn't be long before Thornton's security found them. We need to get to the council meeting, Noah said as they reached the trucks. It starts in 15 minutes. Davis clutched the laptop like a lifeline. This has everything we need, but Thornton will do anything to stop us from presenting it. Noah turned to the horses who stood watching them from the edge of the trees. Thank you, he said simply. Stella approached, touching her muzzle gently to his chest. The copper stallion remained at a distance, but dipped his head in what Noah had come to recognize as acknowledgement. I'll see this through, Noah promised them. The wind's path will remain open. As they drove away, Noah glanced in his rearview mirror to see the two horses standing side by side, silver and copper, against the green forest guardians of an ancient way that had found an unlikely human champion. The emergency town council meeting was already underway when Noah and Davis arrived at the Civic Center. They slipped in through a side door, taking in the scene. The room was packed beyond capacity, with the atmosphere tense and divided. At the front, Mayor Jenkins was speaking with Thornton, seated prominently in the front row. And so, given these developments, we believe it's in the town's best interest to expedite approval for phases 2 and 3 of the Horizon Ranch project. Colonel Thornton has generously increased his investment pledge by 30%, which means more jobs and opportunities for our community. Sarah spotted them from her seat near the back and hurried over. Thank God, she whispered. My father and the tribal council are here. We were getting worried. We've got evidence, Davis said, indicating the laptop. Direct links between Thornton Nexus Defense and the weapons testing. Internal communications, suppressed environmental reports, everything. Sarah's eyes widened. How did you get that? Almost didn't, Noah said grimly. Tell you later. Is there a projector we can use? Yes, it's set up for Thornton's presentation. Mayor Jenkins was concluding his remarks. And now I'd like to invite Colonel Thornton to present the updated plans for the expanded project. As Thornton rose to approach the podium, Noah moved forward. Mr. Mayor, I request permission to address the council before this vote proceeds. A murmur ran through the crowd. Mayor Jenkins frowned. Dr. Reed, this is an official council meeting with a set agenda. You're not on the speakers list. This concerns evidence directly relevant to the Horizon Ranch project and to the arrest of Dr. Oliver Finley, Noah insisted. Evidence that was nearly suppressed by armed security at the Hammond claim less than an hour ago. The murmur grew louder. Thornton's expression remained neutral, but Noah could see the tension in his jaw. Council member Eleanor Simmons, who had voted against the project in the previous meeting, spoke up. I move that we hear Dr. Reed's evidence before proceeding with the vote. I seconded, said another council member. Mayor Jenkins looked unhappy but was bound by procedure. Very well. You have 5 minutes, Dr. Reed. Noah nodded to Davis, who moved to connect the laptop to the projector. As they prepared, Noah addressed the room. Yesterday, Dr. Oliver Finley was arrested for possession of illegal firearms and ammunition, the same type used to shoot wild horses in our region. I'm here to present evidence that those items were planted to discredit Dr. Finley after he spoke out against the Horizon Project. The projector flickered to life, showing the first of the files Davis had recovered: internal emails between Thornton and executives at Nexus Defense. These documents show that the Horizon Ranch Resort is a cover for two operations: an experimental weapons testing facility for Nexus Defense and a uranium mining operation in an area with known cultural and ecological significance. Davis advanced through the files, showing maps, communications, and photographs that clearly demonstrated the true nature of the project. The audience gasped at images of wild horses fitted with tracking devices labeled as live targets for weapons testing. The Hammond claim sits at the junction of ancient wildlife migration routes, what the Shoshone people call the Wind's Path, Noah continued. Thornton's project would permanently block these routes, devastating the ecosystem and destroying sacred sites. He produced the bullet he'd extracted from the bay mare. This bullet bearing the Nexus Defense logo was removed by me from an injured wild horse yesterday. It matches the ammunition allegedly found in Dr. Finley's home. Thornton finally rose. Mr. Mayor, this is absurd. These documents could easily be fabricated. As for the bullet, as Dr. Reed himself points out, it matches ammunition that was legally seized from a suspect's home. The ammunition was planted, Noah countered, just as you've been systematically eliminating opposition to your project. But there's more. Sarah stepped forward, inserting the thumb drive Chief Nathan had provided. The screen showed satellite images of the Hammond claim, clearly depicting construction that matched no-approved plans and vehicles with Nexus Defense markings. These images, taken by environmental monitoring satellites over the past 6 months, show activity at the Hammond claim long before permits were approved, Sarah explained. They show a military-style installation under construction, not a resort. The room had grown deadly quiet, all eyes fixed on the damning evidence before them. Mayor Jenkins cleared his throat. Colonel Thornton, would you care to respond to these allegations? Thornton's calm facade had begun to crack. This is a coordinated attack on a project that would bring prosperity to White Ridge. These people, he gestured toward Noah, Sarah, and Davis, are eco-terrorists and native activists with an agenda. They've fabricated evidence to block progress. The evidence speaks for itself, Noah said quietly. But if the council needs more, Ranger Davis and I can testify to being attacked by armed Nexus Defense personnel less than an hour ago while gathering this information. Davis touched his bruised face. I was detained and assaulted on federal land by private security contractors working for Colonel Thornton. That alone is a federal offense. Thornton's expression darkened. You were trespassing on private property, stealing proprietary information. The Hammond claim borders federal land, Davis retorted, and I was investigating illegal wildlife poaching, which is my job. The council members were exchanging concerned glances. Public opinion in the room had clearly shifted, with many attendees watching Thornton with new suspicion. Mayor Jenkins attempted to regain control. I think we need to review this new information before proceeding with any vote. I move that we table the discussion until no. Thornton's voice cut through the room like a blade. No more delays. This project has been approved. Contracts have been signed. Work has begun. His gaze fixed on Noah. Some people can't accept progress. They cling to the past, to failures, to guilt. He stepped closer to Noah. You couldn't save my son. Now you think saving some wild horses and ancient trails will redeem you. There's no redemption for what you did, Doctor. The personal attack created a shocked silence in the room. Noah felt all eyes on him, waiting for his response. You're right about one thing, James, Noah said, his voice steady and clear. I couldn't save Robert. In war, sometimes we can't save everyone, no matter how much we want to. I've carried that knowledge every day since. Noah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the townspeople he had avoided for 5 years. But this isn't about redemption. It's about truth. It's about respecting what was here long before us and will remain long after. The wind's path isn't just a trail, it's a living connection that sustains this land and everything on it. He turned back to Thornton. Robert loved this country, the real country, the land, the wildlife, the balance of things. Would he want his memorial to be built on destruction and deception? Would he want his name associated with the suffering of innocent creatures? Thornton's face flushed with anger. Don't you dare speak about what my son would want. I was there with him at the end, Noah said quietly. His last words weren't about revenge or monuments. They were about home, this place, these mountains, the wild horses he'd grown up watching. He wanted to protect them, not destroy them. Something in Thornton seemed to crack at these words. For a brief moment, the grieving father was visible beneath the hardened exterior. This meeting is adjourned, Mayor Jenkins announced, sensing the volatility of the situation. The council will review all evidence before reconvening. Colonel Thornton, I believe the state police will want to speak with you about these allegations. As the room erupted in conversation, Thornton fixed Noah with a final burning gaze. This isn't over, Reed, he said low enough that only Noah could hear. Some things can't be stopped once they're in motion. With that cryptic warning, he strode from the room, pulling out his phone as he went. Sarah approached Noah. What did he mean by that? A cold realization washed over Noah. The horses. Echo. We need to get back to my cabin now. They took Noah's truck with Davis following in his Forest Service vehicle. As they sped along the country roads, Noah explained his fear to Sarah. Thornton's cornered. His project is exposed, his reputation at risk. But he still has resources, armed contractors, military connections. If he can't have the wind's path, he might try to destroy what makes it special. Sarah finished the thought. The wild herds. Noah pushed the truck faster, dread building in his chest. The jade horse fetish in his pocket seemed to pulse with warmth, urging him onward. As they crested the final hill before his property, Noah's worst fears were confirmed. Smoke rose from the direction of his cabin, and the distant sound of gunfire echoed across the valley. No, he breathed, accelerating down the slope. The scene that greeted them was chaos. Noah's cabin was ablaze, flames engulfing the wooden structure. Armed men in Nexus Defense tactical gear were scattered across the property, firing at moving targets in the surrounding hills. Wild horses from the hidden valley, led by the copper stallion, who was charging and retreating in a strategic pattern that kept the men from advancing further. Stay in the truck, Noah ordered Sarah as he skidded to a stop behind a stand of trees. Davis pulled up beside them, already calling for backup on his radio. Where's Echo? Sarah asked, scanning the chaotic scene. Noah's eyes frantically searched the area. There at the edge of the property, Stella was guarding her foal, keeping him behind a rocky outcropping away from the gunfire. But two armed men were closing in on their position from the side unnoticed amid the larger battle. Cover me, Noah told Davis, who had readied his service weapon. Without waiting for a response, Noah slipped from the truck and began making his way through the trees towards Stella and Echo. The copper stallion, spotting his movement, launched a particularly aggressive charge that drew most of the attackers' attention away from Noah's approach. The two men closing in on Stella and Echo hadn't seen Noah yet. They were raising their rifles, preparing to fire on the mare and foal. Noah's military training took over. He covered the remaining distance in a silent sprint, tackling the nearest attacker from behind. The man went down hard, his rifle discharging harmlessly into the air. The second man swung his weapon toward Noah, but Stella charged, forcing him to dive aside. Noah wrestled the first man's rifle away and used it to knock him unconscious. The second attacker was scrambling to his feet when Davis's warning shot kicked up dirt beside him. "Federal officer," Davis shouted from his position near the trucks. "Drop your weapon." The man hesitated, then complied, raising his hands. Noah quickly moved to Stella and Echo, checking them for injuries. The foal was trembling, but unharmed. Stella nudged Noah urgently, indicating they should move away from the cabin area, where the main force of attackers was still engaged with the wild herd. "Go," Noah told her. "Take Echo to the hidden valley. I'll find you there." Stella seemed to understand. She herded Echo away from the conflict, disappearing into the trees toward the northern ridge. Noah turned his attention back to the cabin, now fully engulfed in flames. More gunfire erupted as the copper stallion led another charge. The wild horses were creating a magnificent diversion, but they were also putting themselves at terrible risk. Sarah had disregarded Noah's order to stay in the truck and had made her way to his side. State police are on their way, she reported, but they're at least 20 minutes out. Noah counted at least 8 armed men still actively firing at the horses. Too many to confront directly, even with Davis's help. We need to end this before any more horses are hurt, he said. As if in answer to his thought, the jade horse fetish in his pocket grew intensely warm. Noah pulled it out, its green surface almost glowing in the late afternoon light. The wind's path, he murmured. It's more than just a trail. Acting on instinct, Noah raised the jade horse high above his head. The sunlight caught it, sending emerald reflections dancing across the battlefield. The copper stallion, in the midst of another charge, abruptly stopped. His head turned toward Noah and the glinting jade figure. He let out a piercing neigh that echoed across the valley. To the astonishment of everyone present, the wild horses responded immediately. They ceased their chaotic movements and formed a line behind the stallion, facing the armed men with an eerie, coordinated precision. The attackers faltered, unsettled by this unexpected behavior. In that moment of hesitation, the wind rose suddenly, whipping across the valley with unusual force. Dust and debris swirled around the Nexus Defense personnel, momentarily blinding them. When the dust cleared, the horses were charging not in their previous scattered pattern, but as a unified force directly at the line of armed men. The thunder of their hooves shook the ground like an approaching earthquake. The attackers broke. Throwing down weapons, they ran for their vehicles, all semblance of military discipline, abandoned in the face of this primal force of nature. As the last vehicle sped away down the access road, the horses slowed their charge, milling about in apparent satisfaction at having driven off the intruders. Noah lowered the jade horse fetish, staring in wonder at what had just occurred. Sarah and Davis joined him, equally awestruck. "What just happened?" Davis asked. "The wind's path defended itself," Sarah said softly, "just as my father said it would." The copper stallion approached, stopping a respectful distance from the humans. He regarded Noah with those intelligent eyes, then dipped his head in a clear gesture of acknowledgement. Behind him, the wild herd gathered, apparently uninjured despite the gunfire. In the distance, sirens could be heard approaching. The battle was over, but Noah knew the larger conflict had reached its turning point. Thornton had played his final card and lost. Blem. The aftermath unfolded with surprising swiftness. State police arrived, followed by federal agents responding to Davis's report of armed contractors attacking a federal officer. Evidence from the laptop and satellite images led to the immediate suspension of all permits for the Horizon Ranch project and a full investigation into Nexus Defense's activities. Oliver was released from jail that evening, all charges dropped in light of the overwhelming evidence that the weapons had been planted. Thornton himself was taken into custody, facing multiple federal charges related to environmental violations, illegal weapons testing, and the assault on Davis. Noah's cabin was a total loss, reduced to smoldering ruins by the time the fire departments arrived. Everything he owned had been destroyed except for the jade horse fetish, which remained inexplicably cool in his pocket, despite the inferno. As night fell, Noah stood amid the ashes of his former home, feeling strangely unburdened. The physical manifestation of his isolation was gone, forcing him back into the world he had avoided for so long. Sarah approached, offering a thermos of coffee. "My father says you should come stay at the reservation until you decide what to do next." Noah accepted the thermos gratefully. "Thank you, but I need to check on Stella and Echo. First, make sure they're safe." "The Hidden Valley," Noah nodded. "Would you come with me? There's someone there I'd like you to meet." They drove in Noah's truck to the trailhead nearest the Hidden Valley, then hiked the remaining distance as the last light faded from the sky. The stars emerged brilliant in the clear mountain air, illuminating their path. As they entered the valley, Noah was relieved to see the herd gathered there, peaceful in the starlight. Stella and Echo were among them, the foal staying close to his mother's side, but moving with increasing confidence on his healing leg. The copper stallion stood apart, maintaining his vigil over the herd. When he spotted Noah and Sarah, he approached, his coat gleaming like living metal in the moonlight. "This is who I wanted you to meet," Noah told Sarah. "I don't know what to call him. He's the herd's leader, Echo's father, perhaps." "Spirit runner," Sarah said softly. "In our traditions, the copper-colored stallion is spirit runner companion to ghost runner. They guide the souls of ancestors along the wind's path. The stallion spirit runner regarded them both, then nickered softly. From the herd, Stella and Echo approached, joining them in the center of the moonlit valley. They're a family, Noah realized. Echo is their foal. Sarah smiled, and they chose you to protect him when he was in danger, to heal him. Echo limped forward, nudging Noah's hand in greeting. The foal had grown stronger in the weeks since he'd first arrived at Noah's door, his coat glossier, his eyes brighter. Soon he would be running with the herd, following the ancient paths his ancestors had traveled for countless generations. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Rebuild the cabin." Noah looked around the hidden valley, feeling the presence of something older and deeper than human concerns. The wind's path was safe for now, but the threat would never fully disappear as long as humans valued profit over balance. "I think I need to build something different," he said. "A place where the old and new can coexist. A sanctuary along the wind's path." Stella pressed her muzzle gently against Noah's chest over his heart, as she had done once before. This time the gesture felt like a blessing and acceptance. "The land needs a healer," Sarah said. "Someone who understands both worlds." Noah's hands, he realized, were perfectly steady as he stroked Echo's neck. The trembling that had plagued him for 5 years was gone, completely replaced by a certainty of purpose he had thought forever lost. 1 year later, the Wild Wind Sanctuary stood on the northern edge of what had once been Noah's isolated property, now expanded to include the hidden valley and surrounding lands. The main building, a combination of modern and traditional Shoshone design, housed a veterinary clinic for wild and domestic animals, research facilities for wildlife conservation, and educational spaces where visitors could learn about the wind's path and its importance. Noah Reed, no longer hiding from his calling as a healer, directed the sanctuary's work alongside a small staff that included Sarah Medicine River as cultural liaison. Together, they had created something that honored both the wild spirit of the land and the human need to connect with it. Chief Nathan visited often, conducting ceremonies in the traditional spaces and sharing stories with visitors of all ages. Oliver Finley, fully sober for a year now, and with his veterinary license reinstated under Noah's supervision, handled much of the day-to-day animal care. The sanctuary had gained national attention when the federal investigation into Thornton and Nexus Defense revealed the full extent of their plans, not just for Wyoming, but for similar operations on public lands across the western states. The resulting scandal had led to new protections for migration corridors and stricter oversight of defense contractors. Thornton himself, facing years in prison, had made an unexpected choice. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he had signed over the Hammond claim and all surrounding lands he had acquired to a conservation trust. The trust, now managed by the sanctuary with Shoshone oversight, ensured that the wind's path would remain open for generations to come. On this particular morning, Noah stood on the ridge overlooking the hidden valley, watching the wild herd grazing peacefully below. Beside him, Sarah pointed out Echo, now a strong yearling showing the first hints of his father's copper coloring, racing playfully with other young horses. "He's growing up," Noah observed. "Soon he'll be leading his own herd." "The circle continues," Sarah agreed, "just as it should." From the valley, Stella Ghost Runner looked up toward them, sensing their presence. Beside her stood Spirit Runner, ever vigilant. The Silver Mare and Copper Stallion had become almost mythical figures to visitors who occasionally glimpsed them from the sanctuary's observation points. They came and went as they pleased, following routes known only to them, yet always returning to the hidden valley. "My father says they're pleased with what you've built here," Sarah said, "that the ancestors can find their way now thanks to you." Noah smiled. "I just removed the obstacles. The path was always there." He touched the jade horse fetish that he still carried everywhere, a reminder of the journey that had brought him from broken healer to guardian of the wind's path. That evening, as the sun set over the sanctuary, Noah completed his daily rounds and headed toward the ridge trail for his customary walk before dinner. As he reached the trailhead, he found a small figure waiting for him. Echo, now almost as tall as his mother, but still bearing the distinctive scar on his hind leg where Noah had removed the bullet a year ago. "Hello, friend," Noah greeted him. Echo nickered softly, falling into step beside Noah, as naturally as if they had walked together every day of their lives. They followed the ridge trail in companionable silence, human and horse, each choosing freely to walk beside the other. When they reached the overlook, they found Stella and Spirit Runner, waiting as if by prearrangement. The family of wild horses regarded Noah with a familiarity that transcended the usual boundaries between species. Noah sat on a boulder watching as the last rays of sunlight painted the valley in gold. Echo rested his head briefly on Noah's shoulder before rejoining his parents. The three horses stood together for a moment, silhouettes against the sunset. Then, with a final glance back at Noah, they turned and moved away, following an invisible trail that only they could perceive, the ancient wind's path that connected past, present, and future in an unbroken line. Noah watched until they disappeared into the gathering dusk. His hands, steady and sure, traced the contours of the jade horse fetish one more time before returning it to his pocket. The wind rose, carrying the scent of sage and pine and the distant memory of horses running free across unmarked land. Noah closed his eyes, feeling it move through him and beyond, following its own eternal path. In that moment, he understood what Chief Nathan had meant. The wind's path was not just a trail on the land. It was a way of being, a connection to something larger and more enduring than any single life. And as Noah Reed made his way back to the sanctuary he had built, back to the community he had finally embraced, he carried that knowledge with him, steady as the jade horse in his pocket, strong as the wind that would never cease to blow. The wind still blows across the Wyoming highlands, following roots as ancient as time. It carries the sound of hoofbeats, wild horses running free along paths their ancestors have traveled for countless generations. Noah Reed no longer flinches at the tremor in his hands, for they have remembered their purpose. In saving Echo, he found the courage to save himself. In protecting the wind's path, he discovered his own way forward. We all carry wounds, some visible, some hidden deep within. We build walls, retreat to our isolated cabins, convince ourselves that separation brings safety. But healing rarely comes from isolation. It emerges from connection, from the courage to open our doors when something unexpected knocks. Sometimes the wisest teachers have no words at all. They communicate through trust, freely given, through resilience in the face of suffering, through the silent wisdom of ancient ways. The mare called Ghost Runner chose a broken healer to save her foal. Or perhaps in the mystery of things, she came to heal the healer himself. What ancient paths run through your life, connecting you to something larger than yourself? What wisdom might be carried on the wind if only you pause to listen? In the end, perhaps we are all travelers on our own wind's path, following routes we cannot always see, guided by instincts deeper than reason, moving always toward home.